Welcome back to part two of episode 41, where Roger and Ollie continue the discussion regarding coming out of lockdown and our routines.
Is it because there is some extra stress in our lives, we're turning to alcohol to try and numb the feelings there, or is it just we're bored? And it can be easy just to keep those routines afterwards, that we actually take longer and longer to get back into a healthier routine.
Well, the one thing for me I've noticed of coming back into the work, I'd say in some ways it's easier for me because going back to work, the work is very structured and, appointment time, we're not back to my full hours, but we're getting there. What I've noticed is how in lockdown I was able to catch up on sleep, and I realized that how different it is with having that I've got to be at work at a certain time, that kind of pattern, that I've been very aware of how significant how I function when I have a day or two where the sleep, had a poor quality night's sleep, or just got stuck into work and ended up working too late, and then getting to bed, and then having to get up earlier, and realizing that instead of that kind of optimal for me kind of probably no more 9 hours sleep, 8.5 hours sleep, I was getting down to that 1 or 2 nights of that 6.5 hours, and you can function. But I was aware that of it. So I think you start, as we get back into a new norm, I think we've got to become a little bit more connected to the feedback of the body, and we can start seeing how some of the negative elements of our routine, how that affects our function. Not meaning that we're ill, but we're level how we drift away from a peak because we sacrifice something when we work a bit later, or the caffeine. One thing I've done is drop the caffeine from lunchtime. I did that from work go through lockdown. I had 1 or 2 times, and I'm not a big drinker, but you could justify having a little beer in the evening and a bit bored, and that got knocked quite quickly, because you can start to see the patterns, because we're coming from a clean sheet of paper. So, as I said, I think this is a great opportunity for people to notice the subtleties of how they're functioning, rather than just, I want to go back into what I had, because probably what we had wasn't the greatest in some elements, but there's some things obviously we desperately need, like crowds at football, because the artificial crowd is great, but if you watch that football with no crowd, and we've got cricket series coming up and Formula One, it's not quite the same. So we want to be aware of what's different, but also we do desperately need some things back to normality.
On that note, why is cricket still not allowed? I mean, I don't. Well, I watch the Ashes. I watch the World Cup. I don't watch cricket, but yeah.
Cricket starts soon. You've got England are playing West Indies soon, and then did they say something middle of July? The county game starts. So cricket is coming back, but again with no crowds. But there was this whole argument about points of contact and that. And I mean, cricket most times the fielders are spread out, especially if someone like Stokes is batting. But they started getting so technical that the ball becomes a point of contact, so that you're passing the ball around. And so some things I think can get overthought, and other things, it's the crowd. It's the crowd and the transport, which is the main thing.
Yeah, definitely.
On that note, I've got one question for you. If you're a footballer, I know they get paid lots of money to kick a ball around, and we all sign up to Sky, so we're just as bad as everyone. But if you're a pro footballer and you're or any sportsman, and you're now your body says, right, we're opening up, you've got to feel that you're a bit of a pawn in the whole process.
I suppose, but they are being tested.
Well, they're getting tested at least twice a week, the footballers. I mean, the golf's opened up again with no crowds in the States, and they're getting tested regularly. And that, I mean, on one hand, you want to go and play your sport, and that's your profession, but you've got to think that at one hand, people saying, I don't want my kids to go to school, or I don't want this to happen, or it's not safe, I can't go to work and that. But the footballers going around and running around, and although it's obvious when they score a goal, they're not quite jumping and hugging each other as much as usual, but there's still, it's a contact sport. And the big question is rugby. They're going, oh, how do we do that one?
I'm not even sure, to be honest, but I've tried to stay away from some of the football news for obvious reasons the last week. There's some, like, mainstream media seem to be putting out a lot of fake news. Apparently Liverpool won the title for the first time in 30 years, but I'm sure that's fake news.
It's amazing. I'm quite chuffed for Liverpool to win,
No.
I know I'm going to rev you up. But
this
just
because it would have been great if they stopped the season and just left it. Like, no, we can't do it. Norwich are not going to get relegated. Liverpool aren't going to win. But
I think it's good that Liverpool win it. It makes it fresh and varies it, and I think they certainly deserve it. I just amazed that I've never realised that I had so many friends who support Liverpool. They've come out from everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people I've never heard them talk about football, but they're a Liverpool fan. So that's been quite interesting.
Yeah, it won't take us 30 years. I hope it won't take us 30 years anyway. But we digress a little bit. However, when we talk about going back into routine, like we've seen some of the footballers, they've gone quite into a harsh schedule to what they used to. But I'm sure they're all fine with it because there's a lot bigger problems going on than having to play a game 2-3 times a week. But this is something which we are going to have to look at. And like, I've spoken to my clients who haven't had access to a gym and are starting to go back, especially in the US because they've already got a lot of access to it. That if we've been doing different workouts, our body is going to have adapted to them. So for me, I've got 10 kilo dumbbells, I've got a chin-up bar, a dip station, punch bag, and battle ropes. That's what I've got in my body weight. But I'm used to doing things like deadlifting, squats, bench press, and doing these sorts of things with a bit more than 10 kilos weight. But if I go back in and try and lift what I lifted before, that's going to be a massive shock to the system. And we can then
particularly
to build up to it.
Particularly when everyone's going to be very enthusiastic and keen. So that's the classic combination. They're not ready for it, but mentally they're there. They're going to push themselves.
Yeah, it could be like that a couple of weeks after Christmas time, but for everyone. Like when you just got the new starters going on, when they've got these great resolutions to go for, and I hope that more people will stick to it. And I love seeing it when people actually get the results and start sticking to it. But it's going to be hard for people to hold back. And I say that from experience from coming back from injuries before, when I had if you remember, I had a cyst on my head that exploded, and then I came back training too quickly. As soon as the nurse said I could do light exercise, I trained, and then I got shingles. All these different things, like there's stress on our body.
And that's my point.
Stress, there's mental stress at the moment, and we're going to overload.
I've had a few patients this week who have exactly that. They've actually been all right in lockdown, and then they've come out of lockdown. They're very keen to do something, and actually they're inflamed. If you look at it from a functional healthcare perspective, they're not ill, but they're inflamed. They've stressed. The cortisol is up. There's the inflammation in the body, and they bang Achilles. I had one runner who's Achilles tendon because he decided now he's getting back out. He wants to run quicker, faster, and it's an you've got to go through an adaptive process. We've been out of our normal environment for 3 months. That's long enough from a musculoskeletal or a physiological perspective for the body to have changed. You've got to go back through a period of adaptation.
Oh yeah, and then we also look at if someone's been out of the office and they used to have an air conditioner in the office and they've come back, then the hydration in the body might be different. Just the whole of the immune function is going to be different because as we've not been exposed to different germs, regardless of herd immunity from COVID, just germs elsewhere in general. And then we're going to start building ourselves up and put that added stress on the body. And if he's not been running, and then he started running over the last couple of weeks when it's been ridiculously hot, then that's going to have a big, big shock on the body.
Well, and big time also, if they're just running around stressed, they want to go to the gym, they miss it, but actually they walk into the gym stressed like anything mentally because they're so fearful. Their whole physiology will be different. So it depends also what people are bringing back into either that, as you say, it doesn't have to be the gym and physical. It can be going into the office. It can be going into a different environment. And then someone then picks up a cold and a cough, and And, the stress element, I think people, unless they've really been in that significantly stressed pattern, people underestimate how stressful adaptation is, in that actually we become comfortable with the concept of being at home and not doing much. And now the concept of, how relaxed will most people be to go to the cinema first time or to the pub? I've had one or two patients who are so keen that they're going to go to the pub, but I think they're in for a shock because they know it's going to be different, but they still think they're going to, just cruise up and see their mate and go, come, we'll go for a quick pint. They've got to plan up ahead. It takes the whole process out. And that's what's going to happen in the gym. You're probably going to book a time and a slot, and sorry, you can't come that day, or you've arrived late. You've only now got 15 minutes, but people got to watch out. It's going to turn an exciting, joyous thing we've done in the past can suddenly become a very stressful process.
Well, you can see that already with just shopping. You're going to the supermarket, even through lockdown, having to queue for half an hour, 45 minutes at peak times. Like, not as much now, but at the start, when everyone was rushing to the supermarket, half hour to go shopping ended up taking an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah, can you imagine being one of those who've been for a significant health reason? You've got COPD, you've had organ transplant, you've got a significant autoimmune issue, MS or so, and then now you feel that you can come out of lockdown, but now you want to go to the shops. You have had no experience for 9-10 weeks of what a shopping supermarket looks like. It'll fry people. It's huge. Or take us who've adapted to that and go. What happens if you and I had to go back to a supermarket, which was now kind of February time, and walk into it? Anyone can walk in and out. People are walk past each other. It'll be foreign. It'll be totally strange because we've got adapted to it. But there's loads of people who actually haven't done much. They still really are in a lockdown mindset. And that's hugely stressful if you suddenly walk out and people are queuing to go into a supermarket, all aisles with arrows and barriers and stuff. It's totally foreign.
It's an interesting one to think about with that. And have they actually said people that were self-isolating can come out now or not?
There's some which have been on the vulnerable list. The extremely, but the NHS have two lists. The extremely vulnerable are still. I think they were due to come out, and then they put it through to July. But I know, like in Leicester, they've extended that beyond now. So it's going to be beyond August. So there's
when we look at Leicester, because the cases have risen. I haven't seen the exact number of cases, but the tests have gone up. So some people are asymptomatic, and but when you look at the actual data of people actually admitted to hospital, and we think like the cases apparently went up 2 weeks ago, so you'd think they would actually have been seen in hospital. There's still not actually anyone going into hospital from it, and there's not been a peak in admissions. I
haven't read too much into the data yet, but I believe something like in the last 2 weeks, the Leicester had something like 25% worth of the total new cases.
Okay, yeah.
So they're worried about the knock-on effect. And I think also because of the demographic of Leicester and the vulnerable groups and the data, I think they're very worried of a knock-on effect. Time will tell whether
they're trying to do it before as opposed to what they've done with lockdown this time.
Sorry, say that again.
How people are saying with lockdown, well, like not getting into politics or anything like that, but how lockdown happened on the 21st of March or 23rd officially, that lockdown should have happened earlier, apparently with the...
Yeah, I think they're worried about what the potential knock-on effect. There's also obviously the racial demographics and the BAM numbers. And I think it's just, again, there's that fear element of we don't want to be seen to miss something. And it's always easier to be overcautious than undercautious when it comes to the potential. So, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't from a political side of things. But when it's looking at the potential for health implications, it's better to be conservative too quickly, especially that we've got the track record of how to treat people. And it's interesting when you say with the numbers now, the question is are the death rates going down also purely because of the success of lockdown, as well as also the medics on the front line are more adept of how to, the treatment protocols have improved. They've got far more understanding what to do earlier and with more certainty, whereas so they've learned from the earlier cases. So I haven't really tracked hugely with Leicester the numbers and that, but I think there were calls within Leicester and some of the MPs and that so I think they were faced really with rather be caught out being cautious than caught with your pants down.
Yeah, I think it's a funny one to look at. That I'm not going into the depths of the numbers like I was before, because we've all known how frustrated I've got in the past with that sort of stuff. So I'm just trying to control what I can control. And I think on that note, we've not actually spoken too much about how to actually get back into things, just what people are actually going to be seeing when they come out of lockdown. And I think it's something where when we do future podcasts, we should look into some of the previous topics we've done and revisit them now, because I think they're going to help people. And guys, if you have any questions, fire in the comments, go when you're in the center, go and speak to Roger about questions and that you want us to answer on the podcast, and we'll take questions and go through them, because we've done a lot of shows now, and I think it's over a year with a few gaps here and there, but we've covered a lot of topics, and I think that we've both developed a lot more knowledge in this last year. So revisiting some topics might get a lot more. You'll get a different perspective on it.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see what other people's journey is now of what are other people finding that they are putting in because of the process of lockdown, and what are we in hindsight benefiting from. I think the big thing for me moving forwards in our practice is positioning ourselves is to be really a center of looking at why are people vulnerable in the first place. So this is now the great thing we can learn from and say, well, we might not have been individually affected by coronavirus, or we did, and have recovered, but why were we vulnerable, and how can we improve things, and how can we keep up some of the either the new exercise routine, or look at diet, or has the diet and routine got way off track, and now we are aware that the new routine allows us to look at that. So it'd be very interesting to get feedback from people, and for people to give ideas of things that we can come through. It takes a lot of the pressure off thinking, what are we going to talk about?
And then we don't ramble on.
There's things, yeah, we can have a little bit of structure to it as well.
Definitely. Well, guys, thank you for watching, and we shall chat to you all next time.
Keep well, and we'll see you soon.